everybody. Already here in the chat. I was going to call this the midweek hump live, the midweek hump lives, but I decided against that title. I thought maybe that one's not so good. But yeah, this is my first midweek live stream. See how it goes tonight. If it goes well, then I plan on doing more of them, of course. Here, let me make my. No, it looks good, actually. Everything looks good. We have Cat's Music Journey in the house. Well, you got something to listen to now while working there, Cat. I hope you enjoy it. I want to thank you guys so much for showing up this evening. Whether you're watching this live or you're going to watch this in the rerun, I want to let you know I appreciate you taking the time to do so because actually your time is quite valuable. And spending a little bit of it with me is really, really appreciated. So thank you so much. Um, I pondered upon what I was going to make this midweek live stream about. Usually the Sunday at Mike's that I do every Sunday at 11 p.m. same time on Sunday um, has a very narrow focus in terms of the theme usually, or it's a bunch of things that are actually kind of related. The Wednesday one, I think I'm going to make this one a little bit broader, I thought, at first, in terms of what I was going to talk about this evening. And I have quite a few subjects. I titled this one, The Death of the Guitar God. And I want to talk about what that means here coming up. So stay tuned for that. Um, but I found myself actually thinking, okay, let's do a couple of random things. And some of them actually still tie together. What a quinky dink. So I hope some of this tonight entertains you and keeps you fascinated. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to show up. Usually I talk about things that went on this week musically. Just the other day, I don't know if you guys know this pedal. This is the Fender Level Set Buffer. And this is a pedal that I actually used recording my record that's on Bandcamp, Asanoki Ants in the Pantry. I ended up using it on two tracks. And I do believe, I just, but either way, Mr. Sun, I'm sure, for sure. But I recently traded it. I traded it for a old Big Muff from the late 90s. And I traded this and another pedal for that one. And I like the Big Muff. Big Muff has really a versatile sound. I am still of the opinion that with a Big Muff, you can get pretty much any overdrive distortion sound. It's an overdrive distortion pedal, really. And you can get into fuzz territory with it as well. So if you only had the one pedal, Desert Island one, it would probably not be a bad thing to have a Big Muff, to be honest with you. I'm sorry, I keep saying Big Muff, I mean Rat Pedal. Strike the previous statement of Rat Pedal, not Big Muff. I got Big Muff on my mind because I was looking at one earlier on Reverb and I was thinking, but anyway, I digress. I'm sorry, the Rat Pedal. I traded the Rat Pedal back because I just couldn't live with it. It got to the point, actually more accurately stated, I couldn't live without this one. This Fender Level Set Buffer has something in it that really Ben's here. Welcome, Ben. Um, with this load function that's on it, and it acts actually kind of the same way, the kind of lift that you get when you use an EP3. If you guys are familiar with that lift, actually very similar to the lift that you get out of a Klon in a kind of a way, but not exactly. It's just an automatic kind of lift. And in the case of the EP3, it was in the case of the solid state ones, it was the transformers that they used that caused that. But this thing actually has something very, as you know, I owned an EP3 for quite a long time, used it for recordings. And but it just got to be too much of a ponderous piece of equipment to bring out to use. And ever since I was looking for something that gave that little bit of a lift to your tone, and this thing actually has that. I don't know if they meant to have it like that. It's actually supposed to emulate the load that you would get going into a tube amp. Uh, but it gives you that little bump. And also the high frequency control on this is something that really is helpful now that I've switched over to Strats. Um, the Strat sound compared to humbuckers can be considered by some to be anemic sounding. But with this level set buffer frequency, the high frequency knob on this thing, you can really dial in a really nice tone. If you have too shrill of a guitar, you can dial that out. If you got something that's a little bit too, muffled or not as dynamic as you like, you can dial that in with this thing. So it's more than just a level set buffer. In other words, when you plug it in, it drives the anyway, it just makes to make it long story short, it just makes your guitar going into your pedal board and then going to your amp work more effectively. I always like to simplify things, and that just about sums it up. But aside from that, what it really excels at are those little extra things that they threw into it. So I had to have it back. I gave him back the Big Muff. I said, I tell you what, I know this is on me. I don't usually trade things back. I said, but I'll trade you the Big Muff if I can have one of those pedals that I gave you. And he said, fine, which one? I said, the Fender level set. He said, sure. So I got it back. I'm very, very happy about that. It's just one of those pedals that is going to be a forever pedal with me. You find one that really makes a difference. I guess it was good to step away from it for a little while because it gave me the kind of distance that I needed to realize how great of a pedal it was on my board. Your mileage may vary. But in my case, when it wasn't there, I missed it. And when there's a pedal on your board that you miss after a while, that's probably one that's a keeper. So there's that. Mickey's in the house. Hey, sir. Good evening. Thank you so much for showing up for the live stream. Again, I was thinking of a title for this because it's Sunday at Mike's on the Sunday show. I was thinking about calling this the Midweek Hump Live, but that just sounded too OnlyFanish. So I said, no, we're not going to do that one. I'm still thinking about it. Hey, Denro's in the house from Athens, Georgia, USA. Welcome. Thank you so much, guys, for showing up. Yeah, so it was just the Fender level set buffer. Figure that I never really thought that I wanted or needed, but once I got it, I couldn't live without it. So it's very interesting. So yeah, there's that. I need you guys' opinion on something. Since I have you here, an audience, I would like to hear from you guys about something. I'm trying to make a decision here. As you know, I am working on Michael Watson. Good evening, Watson, from Columbia, Missouri. Wow, that's awesome. I think you're the first guy from Missouri of that. Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time to show up and spend some time with us this evening. Yeah, I've been working on these Strat parts caster projects, and it is way, 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 way too cold, A, and windy, B, to set up my portable paint tent in order to try to do a paint job on this. But in the meanwhile, I've been thinking about what color I wanted to use with this particular project. Ben, saying hello to everybody. So what I need your help with really quickly here, guys, is just a quick opinion poll. As you know, this is the body that's going to be painted eventually when I get some good weather. I need 3 solid days above around 12 Celsius, 15 would be better, no wind, for 3 days in a row, and I don't think I'm going to get that until the springtime here in Amsterdam. As a matter of fact, they can barely keep the power on. The power has gone off twice in 2 days, and that's not an awesome thing in the wintertime, but I digress. But this is the body that I'm going to paint, and I am thinking about colors. And I have two colors here that I'm actually considering to be the color of the guitar. So I'll hold them up here so you guys can take a look. This one right here is antique gold. And this one is not a matte gray. It's kind of a glossy gray, I guess, at the end of the day. So I'm trying to decide between these two, which would be the body color. You know, I always wanted, this is more of a copper gold, I would say. I always wanted something along the lines of this color, but I think maybe this may be too, too dynamic for a guitar. Maybe this would be the safe choice. And just to give you a reminder, ooh, ow. Huh. Well, I haven't damaged it yet. This is the neck that's going to be going with. So you're working with this color neck, and you're working with one of the two of these. So just as a kind of opinion poll from you guys, trying to wonder what would be the best to go with this neck. And let me try to put it back without bumping my headphones. Denro, Lee's Life just did a video testing and comparing different paints, golds in particular. Interesting, I'll take a look at that. What color is the fretboard? This fret, it's this one. So it's just this roasted maple fretboard. It's just a plain, there's no rosewood on this one. Lee's Life, yeah, I just read that. I'm gonna check Lee's Life, I'll take a look at that. Hello from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Welcome. Hey everybody. Home of the rat pedal. Yeah, man. As I was saying, I didn't know if I finished that thought, but yeah, as a desert island pedal, for me, it would probably be a rat. The only problem with that one that I traded for is just like every other thing, there are Monday pedals and there are Friday pedals, and that one was just too noisy on my board. I actually have a very quiet board. I don't have a need of a noise gate, actually. All the pedals that I'm using, miraculously, knock on wood, all seem to work well together and don't generate a lot of noise. Cat's Music says do the gray. Yeah, this would be the safe choice. I agree. This would be the safe choice for that. I mean, you know, just imagine the whole thing this gray color. That's just terrible. Like, let's get the label on that side. This gray. As opposed to doing something like this gold. You know. And again, the pick guard is right here behind me. So it's a white pick guard. So anyway, just your guys' thoughts. I would love to hear what you think. You know, I really do enjoy putting these parts casters together. It's a lot of fun. It's a little frustrating. Like, you know, I'm ready to go. I've got this all sanded and filled in and ready to go. You know, it's ready to get primed. But I just can't get any good weather. And but the good part of it is when it's done. And really funny talking about other people's channels. Brad, the guitarist, recently did a Temu parts caster build, and I had to laugh because the body that he used for that guitar, I actually have that body as well. It's the one that it's with Fern getting finished for that Squire rebuild. It was actually all the parts from this body here, the Squire Affinity. I wanted to turn it into a full-size Strat. So I got a good chance, and the same neck too, this very same neck sitting here behind me. So I got a real good bird's eye view of what that was going to look like. As a matter of fact, his pick guard and pickups are actually quite similar in color to what I have. Actually, though, in my case, They're pretty old. They're old parts from the early 2001. Yeah. So naturally faded, maybe more about that minty green color, but dang well similar. So I'm not using this neck. I'm actually using the Squire neck as a Squire neck, actual Squire neck as well. But I thought that was funny. I mean, he had the exact same stuff. Cat's Music Journey. You could also try the Fender Custom Shop Design tool. That's what I use. You know, I forgot about that. Cat's Music Journey. Thank you so much for bringing that up. That is an excellent point. I was actually, well, you know, here in Europe, I will say this much, is that you, depending upon where you're at, and I would say that's just about everywhere, you're limited to, you don't have the choices that you would have in Japan or the States. The other situation that was like this that was very similar was Singapore. When I lived for 5 years in Singapore, my choices were very small in terms of what I could pick. So I have to go with this paint brand and the colors that they have available. Because if I were to order anything from the States, the VAT on it would be just ridiculous. The shipping and the VAT would just be not even worth it. And so there's that. So I have chose these two from this particular line of paints. I also have the matching primer and the matching finishing coat because you want to use the same brand. If you're going to do a paint job, do all the same stuff all the way through, all the same products. But yeah, I'm limited in choices. But I am going to look at the Fender one just for kicks and see if there's something there that's close enough that because they have a few other colors I can choose. So there is that. Michael Watson. That copper gold would be pretty dang cool. Yeah, that's the thing too. I'm thinking that that you know this color, you know, against this kind of pick guard, you know, that would be something, you know. So I'm still, you know, the safe side of me says, hey, just go with the safe one. But one of the things about doing parts casters is kind of customizing, of course, to what you want. It's something, a color or a pickup configuration, or maybe both, a neck or something that you can't get from the factory. So the whole idea behind a parts caster, it was the same idea that Leo Fender put into Strats and Tellys uh, and other Fender products when he designed them, was to be able to do aftermarket work on them. So yeah, I have to make a decision here. I'd say the antique gold too. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Another vote for that. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I might even do a test spray. I don't know. We'll have to see with both. We'll see. Um, so tonight's subject um, is interesting, I think. Antigua. And I got you. We got you. Got you the first time. Tonight's subject, Death of the Guitar God, is the topic on hand. Um, I kind of touch upon it I touch upon it every now and then about stories I hear from people, friends of mine, family members of my Uncle Carlton through his friends too, of course, about how tough it is in the live music scene these days for guitar players. And I heard somebody say that guitar players now have been regulated to the same value of the as the bassist and the drummer. um, which is funny. You're basically the guitar players drop down to bassist or drummer status. Hey, Frederick, welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Guys, I am so really encouraged by the fact that I'm doing this Wednesday for the first time at this time, and you guys are all here and you're supporting me. You know, I'm really, really happy to have you guys here. This is awesome. Um, but, you know, putting a band together is something that I'm starting to hear talked about is no longer fun. It's no longer, and I'm going to get to this. All ties in with the, I tie things together. So follow me, if you will. When I was younger, that's all I wanted to do was put together a band. Um, in the neighborhood that I lived in California, it's called Windsor Hills. It's where I grew up. And a lot of famous musicians were there. I told you that. There was Little Richard driving down the street all the time. There was Ray Charles lived up there. Stevie Wonder had a place up there at one time. And of course, it was one of those situations where there were a lot of garages that had studios and equipment. And I was not interested in sports at all. God bless him, my father really tried to get me into tennis and golf and basketball and all these other things, but none of them took. Skiing, I liked. Skiing was the one sport that I enjoyed doing, and I need to get back to it. It's certainly now that I'm living here in Europe, there's no excuse. Best ski runs in the world are here. But bands were of an interest to me, not, playing music, playing instruments. And so putting together a band from the neighborhood guys was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Margie Z, welcome. It's been a while since I've been able to catch a live stream. Well, I'm so glad to have you here. Again, I'm really touched, as I said, by the support that this community is showing in this first Wednesday midweek live stream that I'm doing here. But I had a lot of fun with my, John McKnight, my good friend. Again, if you guys hear a song by Fishbone called Party at Ground Zero, that's my good friend John McKnight on trombone. Um, but John in his garage was a drawing spot for everybody because there was every guitars, there were cork guitars and basses and drums and keyboards and everything that you needed to jam. And I'd rather jam than play basketball, quite frankly. That's just me. That's the one thing about, I think about Prince quite often, and some of the things that I have in common with him, but his love of basketball is not one of mine. I can count on one hand the amount of hours I spent watching sports. Uh, but jamming, yeah, and that, especially with guys like John, he was phenomenal on every instrument, every instrument. He was the first real multi instrumentalist that I met, and it was good to have him, first year college roommate as well. So I learned a lot from him and got better. But nowadays, it seems that putting a band together is not so fun, especially if you're a guitarist. So your guitarist has become the NPC, the non-playable character, and just as disposable as I before mentioned, rotating drummers and bass players. I kept the same bass player in my Japanese band. He was the one musician that that stuck around, and it's only because he was so laid back and cool. If you go back in my live shows on this channel, you can find them under music videos. You can see him playing Tanaru, and he was just so laid back. But the keyboard player and the drummer I switched them out quite often. And now I think the guitar player has really been regulated to that kind of demise as well, an NPC in the band market. Live music is now really riddled with backing tracks. A lot of cats that I see playing now are using backing tracks. And, that used to be something that I remember Ashley Simpson got booed off of Saturday Night Live uh, once upon a time, a long time ago, because she got caught using backing tracks. But now that seems to be the accepted norm. Um, I can understand using backing tracks to trigger certain sounds that that may occurred on an album that people want to hear that's in in the context of performing something like that. That could also be triggered by a synthesizer as well. But I never ever considered using backing tracks myself when I played live. Never had the idea, never thought about it. Just one of those things. Rick Nelson's in the house. Love your show, man. At 67, it's even harder to find players that like the same tunes, especially since I'm a British invasion kid. Yeah, I'm a cousin of the British invasion kid. Like I said, growing up in the States, oh, man, they played the Beatles' Yellow Submarine animation cartoon movie. Just it seemed like every Sunday, and and then it just went from there. So I can dig that. Yeah, that's what Uncle Carlton said as well. My Uncle Carlton, the guitar player for Fats Domino, Hall of Famer, he was saying that a lot of his friends are in his age group, which is in the 80s. They're all in their 80s. Pretty much the same thing of just finding cats who want to play those tunes. And so that's very interesting. So here we have another kind of nod in that being true. And for guitarists, really, one of the things that you used to do when they didn't use backing tracks, the guitar player kind of figured out the parts that were not really guitar parts but needed to fill in, the tune. If I didn't have a part on a track, I would say to my guitar player, Kago, will come up with something. I'll play this, and you come up with something that'll play around it, and vice versa. But no, nowadays that is another. The live backing tracks have really made that aspect of a guitarist's work redundant as well. So there's that. And so, you know, I thought about that because last week I talked about how I seriously doubted uh, that the kind of era that I grew up in, that Rick grew up in, a lot of you guys grew up in, where you had the constant MTV on, especially as a teenager, which had a wide variety of music. Once Prince broke and Michael Jackson broke the color barrier, but they had a wide variety of music on there, and if you were a musician and you were growing up that time, especially if you were a guitar player or bass player like myself, boy, man, it was great. That just doesn't exist anymore. So therefore, I wonder how many young people are going to guitar through that kind of venue, which is the broadest venue there is. It's a catch-all. Hey, evening, sir. Ben Omar, Friday night videos. Hey man, Tom, I'm intimidated by your name the chord. I'm watching it. I don't always comment on it, but I watch every one, and I think that's awesome. I really like that, but I'm intimidated by it because I would fail on every one. Been Friday night videos. Yeah, that was in LA. They had Friday night videos. That was it was either that or I can't or another one they had. Maybe it was Friday night videos. Um, that one wasn't that the one that was in UK. There was one that was from the UK. I keep confusing them, but the first time I saw Prince was on one of those, you know, late night video, early pre MTV video programs. Dinro, Night Tracks. Night Tracks was another one. So I grew up watching those in LA. They played them. Easy enough, just slide down the fretboard and at least the right key. Yeah, I'm gonna get into it, man. I dig what you're doing there. Actually, I wanted to tell you that. I'm glad you showed up so I could tell you. I really dig that. I suggest you guys go check out what he's doing. It's a kind of a, it's kind of like on a calendar. I saw a calendar the other day that had a quarter of the day. So it's kind of that kind of thing, and it's awesome. It's awesome. So please go check him out, everybody. Go check it out. Um, yeah, all of those awesome video show, late night video shows, and then in LA we had one with a DJ. God, what was his name? He's an Aussie guy. He was a big DJ in LA at the time. He had an afternoon. As soon as I came home from high school, I turned on the TV, and my little sister, we would watch that TV show, and listen to Jim Ladd in Southern California. Well, I listened to Dr. Demento in Southern California. My brother who listened to that. We listened to the Demento show, and boy, that was you learned about first. Weird Al Yankovic recordings were played there. Another one rides the bus. I think was the first one I heard from him. So a lot of rich stuff, and that just doesn't really exist anymore. We know it was all of the small radio stations being basically crushed, and satellite radio taking over, where everything is being centralized in terms of the programming, as opposed to back then, you had all these different areas. You could break records back then by just going to one DJ in one particular region and getting him to like your record and play it. And if it breaks there, you could go to the next guy and say, hey, they're playing it in Des Moines. How come you're not playing it in Boise? And that's how that used to go. But that doesn't exist anymore either. And that gave there was a variety, because it really gave it gave a lot more chances for people to break. Again, the diversity that doesn't exist anymore. We did Dr. Demento every Sunday night. Yeah. Frederick Rogers Gold. Yeah. So that doesn't exist. So where are you getting at, Mike? What does any of this have to do with your title, The Death of the Guitar God? Well, everything in my regard, in that regard. Why were you a guitar god? Why do we call guitar gods in the first place? Or why did we? Why did we actually, or why were they actually referred to that? Why did it have scrawled Clapton is God on the wall there in London? Why was that moniker given to these people? Well, a couple of things that I'll throw out there that had a lot to do with it, that are real, the realities of it. This was not post-war. Let's stick with the UK. Let's talk about the UK. In that period, during a time, the economy was, in the 60s, it was middling. It was nothing as bad as it was during the Thatcher time, but it was middling. There was a growing middle class. Clapton is God was a famous photo. Yeah. Yeah, there's a picture of it. Yeah. Where somebody scribbled that on the wall and put that and took a picture of it. But why is that? You can get into the backgrounds of the families of Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton. We go through the roster of those cats. And we can see that most of them were thoroughly middle class. And I think that, Keith Richards, Mick Taylor, if you look at how accessible getting a guitar was at that time, it was not that easy, especially if it was a good one. When the Yardbirds did their changeover, there was a handing over of guitars there, if you're familiar with those stories. A lot of these guys traded guitars amongst each other. One of the reasons they did that is because if Bob is playing it, I know it must be a good guitar because I saw him play it the other night, so I know how it sounds. So I know it's a good one because there are a lot of bad ones. And B, there was a limit. There wasn't a Tomon. There wasn't a Sweetwater. There wasn't really a Guitar Center. There was the very similar to some of the music stores we have here in Amsterdam, where they also sell tubas and violins and trumpets and sheet music. That's actually their main business. They might have a little bitty section for electric guitars, and that's how it was during that time. You were a guitar god if you had a guitar in the first place. That was one of the things that led to that moniker I submit to you tonight. Today, well, it's easy to get a good guitar. As a matter of fact, there are some inexpensive guitars that will give some of their more expensive counterparts a run for their money. And so you don't have to order your guitar out of the Sears catalog like Jimi Hendrix had to do. You didn't have to, take a cigar box and some timber and put together one like Muddy Waters did when he was younger, with only 2 strings on it. You don't have to lie like John Lennon did to some girl to get the key to the university amp, the amp that was in the music. Somehow or another he finessed an amp, or was it a guitar? Either a guitar or an amp out of some girl, because he didn't have the money. He needed it. They didn't have the money for the equipment, and it wasn't something that was widely available. And by the way, he never gave it back. So I don't know how much trouble she got into. But it was a scavenger hunt. There wasn't the availability that there is today. And so that diminishes the concept of being a guitar god in that aspect, because if you just had one, it was just, Mick Jagger said the reason that he and Keith Richards first hit it off is because Keith had a complete collection of blues albums. So he'd go over his house and listen to, because they loved listening to American blues records. And so, and that was made possible by Mr. Hammond, but I don't want to get into that history. John Hammond. But in any case, it really was a scavenger hunt and don't have the availability that you have today. So lots of YouTube videos that'll teach you chords and theory for free. Studio accessibility is another thing. During that time, your chance of getting into a recording studio was nil, unless you were a signed artist. And it was a gatekeeper. It was eventually a way for labels, in order to have control over their artists, or not just in terms of creativity, but in terms of financial aspects as well, when you get into the billing process of that. So that ended up being something that was controlled by the labels, but it was a gate that you had to cross over into. Nowadays, everybody, if you got an iPhone, you could shoot a movie. You could record things using an iPhone, edit as well. If you got a Mac, you got a full studio. If you got a better studio, if you have a Mac and any kind of decent software, you have a better studio than Abbey Roads was when the Beatles was cutting Sgt. Pepper, Lonely Hearts Club, for example. You do. Just the fact of it. And easier to use as well. You don't have to do the overdubs of overdubs that they had to do in order to make those records work. You have an unlimited amount of tracks. And this diminishes the guitar player as well in a lot of ways, because again, like I said, if you were paying serious money for a serious gig at a serious studio, then you would want to hire serious musicians. Well, things aren't so serious anymore for the most part. Even some people who won Grammys, they cut their albums in their bedrooms. And that's just the way it is, That's the new reality. So this is another thing. So these two things led to the current diminishment of the so-called guitar god in terms of stature in the music world or overall the general world populace in general. You know, I thought to myself, I mentioned some of the original guitar gods, and I keep coming back to the question: are there, you know, there are certainly virtuosos on guitar these days. There always has been. But is there any true guitar gods since maybe Stevie Ray Vaughan? You know, and I say that with an eye on John Mayall, of course. But is he a guitar god, or is he more like Christopher Cross, who's a great songwriter but a great guitarist as well? You know, nobody looks at Christopher Cross and starts using the guitar god stat, although they should because he's an excellent player. But so I just don't think that if you take a Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was an inventive, very inventive when he came out with his style, it was something that really created a whole new genre of music during that time in the '90s, where a lot of bands ate off of that guy. And Betty Van Halen, again, a virtuoso, but a good songwriter, but a guitar god because he brought in something new. If you've heard that first Van Halen album when it first came out, like I did, it probably blew you away. Still does. So I think that the guitar god is a dead thing. Some metal, some of the metal blokes, yeah. I mean, Kirk Hammett, of course. I think that in his own way, he was a trailblazer. I think that Mickey Newman, there's a lot of amazing technical and fast players. That's what I mean, virtuoso. There's a lot of virtuosos. And I find that boring after a while because, you know, I like the, I don't want everything to be perfect. I want it to be in pocket, but it doesn't have to be perfect. That's always, I've always thought that. I've always thought that. And fast players, but not many true riff writers and players that make your hair stand up on end. No, no. Like I said, since, and again, since Stevie Ray Vaughan passed away, since Prince is gone, those are two phenomenal ones that we lost. That list is getting shorter and shorter. It just is. See, these guys, I'm sorry. Master Metal 80, it blew me away in the 90s. It's still blowing some new kid away. How awesome. Yeah, I hope so. But that kid has to find that. So, or you got to have an adult or an older sibling or somebody to point you in that direction. And if they didn't have that as themselves, you know, the further away we get from that, the less it diminishes. In terms of, you know, you really have to. You know, there are some groups and bands that were on the cover of 17 magazine, and now if I were to name them to you, you wouldn't even know who they are. Like, anybody know who Bobby Sherman is? And so that becomes that danger. It's also the lack of access to guitar music in general. Well, yeah, that's the, you know, that's what this is, you know, I was setting up in that first bit, talking about putting a band together and how that's become a drag and how the necessity of a guitar player is diminished. And one of the things in that diminishing, the guitar god has diminished, and the chance of there being a guitar god in the future is really diminished. And the list of ones that we have, well, they're, God bless them, but they're not young, and it's getting shorter and shorter all the time. And the kid will come to YouTube, and YouTubers point kids to all grades. Well, that's what I was saying here. Now it's easy to get a good guitar, for one. You can get an inexpensive guitar that will give a more expensive one a run for its money. But there's lots of YouTube information. Back when I was a kid, that was not the case. I had to go to Mr. Fox, who was my guitar teacher, and then eventually some of the other guys I've had since, in order to learn. There was no YouTube. And so you had to have a hunger for it, or there were some cats who could just pick it up and learn on their own, and there was that as well. But that did not exist. Ellie, I'm sorry, my cat is being a cat. Tommy Mack, hello, watching before I commute home from work. Hey, Tommy, welcome. Have a safe journey home. So there's that, guys, and what it is, and I touched on this last week. How has that affected the guitar market? Well, we talked about Gibson and their $20,000 guitars the last live stream, and since then, the general consensus, I think, amongst most YouTuber guitar guys is thanks but no thanks. But what is driving the sales behind those things? If there are no true guitar gods like Slash, is another of a later year guitar god, in my opinion. And he elevated Gibson using a guitar that was not really Gibson, but that's neither here nor there. And elevating that brand, and they could point towards that. Well, now in 2023, they've turned into a bunch of snake oil salesmen, in my opinion. They're exploiting old instruments by creating new versions of them and somehow using a tenuous connection back to these original old instruments that they're exploiting. Slash came along 35 years ago. Dig that, ladies and gentlemen. 1987. Dig that. And I always say Stevie Ray Vaughan because he was actually after that. He came around in the 90s, but so he would actually be, Stevie Ray Vaughan would be the last real guitar god. And I'm talking about in general. And in metal, like I said, there's Kurt Hammett for sure. And there's a lot of other cats. Some of them that you would think that I would mention, no, because they're actually virtuosos. They're not, especially the metal scene. A lot of them are just fantastic players, but they're more on the virtuoso side. They're not really what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody that has a mass appeal to everybody, that everybody can point to. Even the polka guys would say, yeah, he's a good rock player, guitar player. So that's a criteria there. Yeah, they're snake oil salesmen now. And they're, again, exploiting the value that no longer exists. And because they're not doing anything to advance or to find that next Slash or whatever, they're really, really getting tenuous with their connections with a lot of this stuff they're coming out with. Although that latest Slash amp, yeah, money, money, money. Dig that. But off of, a cat who hit the scene 35 years ago. Again, these really snake oil, tenuous connections to a glorious filled past that no longer exists. It doesn't. And, meanwhile, the actual guitar players' value is diminishing every day. And finding a band that wants a guitar player is the funny thing. It's like, do we want a guitar player? Well, I don't know. I don't know if we need that. Because it's just, what are you gonna do? Most of these pop songs, it's like 2 chord, maybe 4 chord riffs. That's it, man. That's it. And is that what you want to play? Is that what you want the Juilliard to do? Is that why you went to the Guitar Institute in Los Angeles? I don't think so. So it's sad, you know. And the death of the guitar god goes hat in hand with again the death of just the guitar itself, or the importance of guitar in modern music. Now, can this turn around? Yeah, you know, I'm always encouraged by people. You know, there's that old song, "People make the world go round." People make the world go round, and I'm always encouraged by people. You know, you can only for so long spoon feed people cotton candy before they begin to regurgitate it and say, hey, you know what? Could we change this up? Could we put something else on the menu here? Because this is getting nauseating. And I think we're seeing that certainly in the rap industry. Again, last year, no top 10, no number one hits, very few top 10 songs. That's a genre that's dying. That's a sure sign of it. That's like rock in you know the mid 2000s. Start seeing that dip. And so people just got tired of, there's so many ways you could hear some chick talking about how she's going to do various things at the strip club. And so, you know, that just got real tired real quick. Now, something has to move into that slot. And if it's alt music, fantastic, because there's a lot of guitar in alt music. That's one of the alt music sort of became what the old AOR music was back when I was growing up. You know, it was not the corporate rock per se, but the spirit of just a whole lot of different kinds of things. You know, you pee on it, I pee on it, we'll see what grows, kind of situation. And that is something again. Well, you know, I'm encouraged that that might slip into that slot. I hope. Um, you know, rock as it existed in the older forms, I think that's dead. You know, wherever it goes to in the future will be interesting to see. I bring up Greta Van Fleet again because there was a band that tried to bring that back to the consciousness of people, and they kind of slipped off. I think in years to come there will be a Behind the Band on VH1. Does that still exist? On Greta Van Fleet, and they'll be like, yeah, you know, this A&R guy after our first album says, no, you guys need to move over in this direction and do this kind of thing. It's always somebody at the label that screws that up. And then they drop you because you didn't do well. Yeah, it was your advice. Mickey Newman, I don't believe there hasn't been a great movement in music since the 90s, Britpop. Previous to that was grunge and then hair metal. Yeah, I agree with that. Mm. I know you guys, I hate to hear it, but the Spice Girls, there was actually something there. As it turns out, Victoria Beckham turned out to be, you know, quite a classy lady, quite a something. You know, you wouldn't have thought the Spice Girl is going to turn out to be, yeah, quite a lady. But as it turns out, she always really was. But yeah, there's nothing musically like a lot of that stuff. Yeah, I agree. But the Brits were dominating from the 80s and also in the 90s as well. The Brits were hammering. You know, I talk very fondly of George Michael. I mean, George Michael doesn't, he finally got his props this last Christmas. You know, he came out with that song Last Christmas at the same time that Band Aid was doing Do They Know It's Christmas? And so his was the number two song, that was the number one song. If it hadn't been for that coincidence of that happening, that would have been a number one song. Just recently, last year, after how many decades, it finally hit the number one spot. And it just goes to show you, I keep saying about George Michael in terms of the British producers, They keep trying to write him off, you know, but if you go back and listen to his stuff, it was solid. And you know, it's unfortunate he didn't get knighted like some people did. I gave my nephew a guitar because he wants to learn, but had no idea what music to listen to. So had to list 10 LPs. Yeah, there you go. You had somebody there, as I was saying, pointing in that direction. Somebody, a parent, a brother, family friend. You know, it was my father's best friend, Jimmy Dorsey, who introduced me into reading the books of Velikovsky, you know, Ages and Collisions and things like that, you know. So, you know, somebody to point you in a because I would have never read those things, you know. In any case, it would have even occurred to me. But once I did, boy. As a matter of fact, I can blame him for starting me down the rabbit hole. Actually, now that I think about it, at a young age. That's funny, Rick Nelson says. 20,000 guitar Gibsons, and my newest favorite guitar is $250, never sold as a new Epiphone Les Paul Special, and it's more than 20 times less than my Rickenbacker 360 that I love. Well, yeah, you know, price tag doesn't always really. I have sweaters because it's cold here. You know, people keep giving me these really nice, expensive sweaters, but this old beat up one that I've been wearing for years now is the one that I keep reaching for because it's comfortable, it's natural, and it's just one of those things. I have nicer ones, but it's the one that I reach for. Same thing with guitars. Mickey Newman, I miss George Michael, Prince, and David Bowie. Those guys were fantastic and went too soon. Yeah. You know, we will not see a generation of musicians like we saw in the 20th century, I think, again. I think it, I know that's a big statement to make, but really, if you reach back from Duke Ellington all the way up to Prince or David Bowie or, you know, Freddie Mercury. Freddie, my God, what a fantastic performer all the way around. You're not going to see guys like that, you know. The price doesn't matter. My number one bass was $75. Play it live near every week. There you go, brother. Again, that Harley Benton bass guitar. If you blindfolded me and you put my Fender that I sold, and then you put the Harley Benton in, they weigh the same, they feel the same, they sound the same. I can't tell the difference. And unlike guitars, once I have that's just like my mandolin. Once I have one mandolin, that's all I need. Got a good one. Once I have a good bass guitar, I don't need any more. And that Harley Benton is a winner. I should do a show on that. And kids just can't afford these prices, and they will move guitars ahead the next year. See, you know, that's the thing too. You know, that the snake oil marketing department at these guitar manufacturers are really focusing in on that 1%. It really is their key demographic, and screw everybody else. But again, as I pointed out, the 1% is not doing so well these days. And so, boy, talk about painting yourself into a corner. And in terms of kids being able to afford, again, they don't care. That's not their concern anymore. And the secondary market doesn't help either. Loose Fan 63, welcome in the house. Just got off work. Hope you had a good day at work. Imbibe yourself with whatever it is, refreshment that eases you in it into the evening. I'm having orange juice. I felt something coming on, and even if I get a sniffle, man, I start downing B12 and orange juice. I've been playing my HP Fusion 3 out more than the PR sector. Yeah, you know, boy, oh boy, Harley Benton. And it's such coincidence, or maybe it's the market, or maybe it's one of those things to be a coincidence. Again, I think of that line from The Dark Knight where Jim Gordon says, "You're a detective now. You can't afford to believe in coincidences." That's such a great line, because as we see Epiphone price themselves out of the budget range guitars into the mid to even in some cases upper level pricing. Boy, Harley Benton through Tomon slid right into that spot, and people are using them. They're gigging them, and they're starting to get some respect. There's some guys out there still, like the guys over at Casino Guitar Channel, who hate them. But they are starting to garner a lot of respect. So dig that. James, hey brother, how are you doing? I'm doing fine. Yeah, EPs can now be 1400 or more. So over here in Europe, I told you that that Epiphone that they just came out with was the Greenie, whatever one that was. That was $1,869 over here once you do the conversion from euros to dollars over here. It was an 18. It was, and again, we've been talking about that. My good friend Three Chord Dave first, and then myself about how the day of the $2,000 Epiphone. He said, "Damn well, it's not here. It is here. It's here already. It arrived a lot quicker than we thought." But Harley Benton through Tomon really slid into that spot. Not all of them are great, um, but that bass guitar sure is. It does the job. Mickey Newman, what will Gibson do once their customer? That's where I was kind of alluding to there, Mickey. I'm glad you picked up on that. Is what do you do when you paint yourself into that kind of corner, and your customer base fades away? In China right now, they're having some economic issues, and a lot of the restaurants, a lot of the stores, and a lot of the shops that cater to the middle class have gone out of business because the middle class economic situation is unstable due to a variety of things from housing to work, things of that nature, regulations that changes the nature of a small business there. And it's facing a lot of pressures. And as a result of that, all the things that the middle class people do, like shop and eat in restaurants and buy clothes, all of those shops have closed up, and there's nobody in those malls. It's a ghost city. It's a ghost city in some cases, in some parts of China, in terms of their shopping areas. And I think only God knows what would turn that around other than again propping up the middle class and making them being able to be in the position to afford those things. And I think about Gibson painting themselves in the corner of just approaching the one percenters and saying, boy, if if the same thing happens to that 1% crowd, and it does, they tighten up from time to time, then you guys are going to be in big trouble. So that's just how it is. So all of these things have led pretty much well to what I call the death of the guitar god. You can't have a guitar god if the environment is really not conducive to have one. And I submit to you that that environment, that cooking, that melting pot, that cooker, pressure cooker that created these artists during those eras, that just doesn't exist anymore. Even a guy like me, you know. The reason I took up to try to play, guys, I played brass in junior high school and high school, or first year of high school, until I found there were other things I'd rather put my mouth on. Sorry. But I actually played French horn. And I always tried, and trumpet. And I always tried to pick up as many instruments as I could because I was influenced by so many different musical styles. My dad's jazz, my mother's country, classical music, rock music, and all the different things. The reason I wanted to learn to play the mandolin is because I listened to John Denver's album. You Fill Up My Senses like a night in the forest. What's the song? That song, Annie song, and it has the most beautiful mandolin solo in it. And I always wanted to do something like that, so I took up the mandolin because of that. If you don't have those influences, then where are you going to draw from as a kid starting out? Benny Lawson, hey Mike, I'm glad I made it. Better late than never, I always say, and I'm so glad that you did make it. That was Sax for Me, did it all, State Comps music. Yeah, man, yeah, dig that. And it was also in high school, that my music teacher, Mr. Magruder, said you'll never have a career in the music business, and that pissed me off so much that even to this day, 40 years later, over 40 years later, I've set it out to prove him wrong, really wrong. Didn't purchase guitar in 2023. I may buy Squire Classic Vibe this year, but that's the only one. Yeah, again, people are tightening up, and it's one of the things where I think that I'm reading the room correct when I say I'm good. I, as a business, sell them. As a matter of fact, it's the reason I had to go to Frankfurt next week, Tuesday, 4-hour train ride. But it's all right. I'd rather, train than plane these days. Just to do some guitar business. But for myself personally, these, Strat builds are more than enough for me. I've got one with Fern. I'm still waiting for. I need to check with him and see if he ever got to ordering the tuners on that, tuning heads on that. And of course, this one right here, where I'm talking to you guys about the color, and because I can't get any decent weather, that one ain't happening anytime soon. And I'm certainly not buying anything until, I get this one done. So yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, it's interesting how we have painted ourselves into a corner. It really was that Bill Clinton and making it so that, the satellite companies could take over the radio sphere. And it really painted us into a corner where we just didn't have that diversity. We didn't have that, what I call natural selection. Not that I believe in Darwinism, but in this case, there was something to it because there was a natural selection as opposed to this controlled selection that we're getting these days in terms of the music that's putting out there. I haven't listened to the radio guys in so long, it's not even funny. I couldn't even tell you what the latest song, unless Rick Beato does his every 4 months or so top 10 thing, I wouldn't pay attention to it. I wouldn't know it. And when I listen to what he plays, I'm horrified. In most cases, I'm like, I don't want to listen to that. And I always thought to myself, is this the old fogeyism? Oh, you're just an old man. Get off my porch, you kids. Am I turning into that, or is it really crappy? And so I try to step out of myself and look at it from a production standpoint. Okay, is there something? I always say, let me listen. Is there something in this that I like that they did production wise? Maybe that will open up to me seeing whether or not there's something here or not, just not automatically throwing up my barrier. And most of the times these days, no. Near all BBC radio is aimed at under 30s. Yeah, there's that too. But it was that way when I lived in, as you know, I lived in Blackheath in London for 5 years. 4.5 years. And I noticed that about about the music there too. At that time, in the mid 2000s, it was the same. As opposed to here in the Netherlands now, when I go to the supermarket or I go to H&M or clothing store or something like, or any of that type of shop that plays BGM, it's always older stuff that they're playing. They're playing songs that I know. I'm like, hey, I know that song. It's like back after song. I'm like, I know that one. I know that one. I know that one. And it's weird. It's like here it's kind of regressive. They're kind of stuck, and they're stuck in the ABBA era, and they never really broke free of that, which is good for me because when I go out and I have to listen to BGM, at least it's something like, hey man, I haven't heard this song in a long time. You know, if you walk by the coffee shops, the marijuana shops. You would think that those guys would be playing dum 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 and that type of music, but no. Most of the time, they're playing old school rap. They're playing old school R&B. Um, yeah, so it's like, hey, you're walking by, you're like, hey, I haven't heard that one, since I was yay high. So there's that. Apart from Test Match Special, which is about under 30s, yeah. I listen to internet radio stations playing 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Well, that's what YouTube has become for me. It's become my radio station. Like I want to listen to ELO's Mr. Blue Sky. So type it in and away we go. And yeah, that's what it is for me. And if I hear something from somebody else or somebody recommends to me, boom, 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 usually it's on YouTube, I can look it up. Margie Z, nothing separates the generation like their taste in music. Yeah, you're only as intelligent of the level of entertainment that you take in. You're only as intelligent as the level of entertainment that you take in. A lot of that rap music sounded simplistic because it sounded like nursery rhymes. It had the same cadence as a nursery rhyme. Uh, Both structurally and lyrically, and musically and lyrically. And it was really low hanging fruit stuff. And when I listened to it, I could feel my brain cells, dying. And whereas there are some cats out there who, like a Kendrick Lamar, I guess I could say, who try to expand and bring a little bit something more to the table that I could appreciate. So, it really comes down to quality, actually. It's not an age thing, it's a quality thing. And I refuse to let, bad quality, I don't take bad quality in my mouth, consuming wise. Why should I consume through my ears that as well? I just won't do it. Margie, you're not so sure when you play some old rock and roll, everyone's up and dancing. Yeah. Even young people, they recognize, 80s fashion is in here. Again, these guys are very aggressive here. I don't know. It's like, my God, I haven't seen a girl wear that since I was in high school. Well, guess what? It's back. It was old as new. So dig that. Ben Allmark. Mickey, if you'd be as kind as to tell me a couple of those top stations. Oh, there you go. Yeah, sure. Share the info amongst yourselves, guys. I can't in my 80s fashion. Hey, man, dig it out of the closet. If you bring it here and wear it, you'd fit right in. Nobody would even question. But, Dutch women, they love shiny stuff, man. They love sequin stuff. Every Dutch woman in her closet either has a sequin blouse, I've seen sequin boots, sequin pants, sequin beanie or something, and on the wrong day, if the sun is shining, man, that stuff can blind you. And it's all really 70s ABBA type vibe to it. And you'll see it's not just older women, but mostly older women, but you'll also see some younger girls who are reaching into their mom's closet and wearing that stuff too. What goes around comes around. Nothing is new under the sun. Isn't that what was written? Yeah, that's true. So I find it very funny, but it's comfortable here for me in Amsterdam because of that. Musically, honestly, there's a more diversity here than there in Singapore. Was just god awful because there's restrictions there because it's very restrictive government. But in terms of who could come, but at least in it was the last live music scene that I played live that I performed, and at least there was a live scene there. I could sit in with a band. Hey Mike, you want to come in and do something? Yeah, let's do "Fly Me to the Moon" in D, or something like that. All right, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, count it off, and we go. And so that doesn't exist even anymore there. And here, there still is a little bit of that. We've got some great live houses here down the street that are constantly packed every day with people. So I like it here. If I were to do a live thing, it would be here. This would be the best place, I think, one of the best places in the world in order to get back to doing it again. So I kind of, unless like I said, the music here, it's stuff that I know. So, and I think they would appreciate what I'm doing as well, young and old. So there's that. But I think that is enough for our Wednesday live stream. I am going to do this every Wednesday. So let me think about, a catchy title for this. what, Sunday at Mike's, okay, that's great, that makes sense. Wednesday, something I'll come up with. But we will be doing this every Wednesday. So the next time I will see you guys is this coming up Sunday. The same time, same bat channel, 11 p.m. Sunday night. We will do another live stream where we will talk about more garbage and more vapid issues. They really don't amount to much. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. Yes, and all of you ladies and gentlemen, do take care of yourselves for the rest of this week. Slide into the weekend, get through this midweek hump the best you can. For those of you going to work, for those of you coming home from work, keep a smile on your face, keep it positive, and I will see you all hump day discussion. now again, that's too OnlyFans ish, so no. Wednesday ramble. That one's not bad. Let's put that one, let's table that one. Have a good one. Practice. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Hump Day Live hang. That's a good one, Blues fan. You actually made me crack up. But again, a little too OnlyFans, so we don't want to give the people the wrong idea. We ain't that kind of YouTube channel. No, nobody want to see that. Yeah, I seen that video. I seen it too. All right, guys. You take care. I'll see you this Sunday. Bye-bye.